finished skinning the bottom of the wing, flipped it over right side up now. I made a set of jigs very similar to the ones that come from the factory to hold it upside down when you do the bottom skin. I made another set of jigs that I clamped to the table to hold the wing upright for while I'm working on the fuel tank. I wanted the tank to be sitting on the bottom skin. You could probably honestly put that do this tank work in a wing rack, but it wasn't hard to make these jigs. I just got some 3/4 MDF and cut it to the shape of the airfoil, and then put a 2x4 on it and clamp that to the table. So I've got one at each end. I've got the fuel tank in the wing right now. I'll show you what's going on with that. So what I did was I unclecoed this root rib, then slid the tank in and then reclecoed it. And I had a little bit of a gap, and I had this on the left wing as well. So I made a little shim. You can see it in there. That's on the bottom, and then there's a longer shim on the top. And it just makes the skin set on this rib better, so I don't have any pillowing. But I've got that, like I said, I got the tank back in. The tank is all the way forward. I don't know if you can see in here, but it's resting against the webbing of this leading edge spar. And it's as far to the root as possible. So I've got the tank where the plans say to have it. I've marked with the Sharpie here the opening for the fuel cap in the tank, where the filler cap is, and I've also marked the holes for the screws for that and the vent. The next thing I'm going to do is with this tool here, and the plans show you how to make this. This is just a 1-inch dowel. I did have to sand on that a little bit, but I've drilled a hole in the center of it and attached a little piece of aluminum to the end of it, and it'll go in these holes. Then that aluminum will keep it nice and 90 degrees to the rib. So that'll just be a guide to then insert my drill and drill a pilot hole for these sight gauges in the side of the tank. So I'll drill those two, and then we'll uncleco, take the root rib out, take the tank out. We'll open those holes up to 1/2 inch for the fittings that go on it, and we'll work on cutting the large hole in the top of it. Here you can see my pilot holes, and that needs to be opened up to 1/2 inch. So I've got a unibit, and I'm going to use this little extension here. So that will keep my chuck from rubbing on the edges of this hole because the 1/2 inch is the last notch on my unibit. If your chuck rubs on the edge of that hole, you can get an elongated hole. Ask me how I know about that. So I had to deal with that on the first one that I drilled on the first tank, but we got that fixed now. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but that unibit went into the tank. Fortunately, I had another one. I got this one tape to my extension so it doesn't fall in. I'll be able to get that out when we cut this larger hole in the tank for the cat. But all right, here we go with the second hole. All right, need to deburr those slightly and we'll be good to go on those. All right, so I've taken my ruler and gone from the center of each of those holes, and where those lines cross will be the center of the opening. Obviously, this tank is part of the molding process and is not in the center. This is a plate that I used from the first tank. It's got those lines on it, so I'm going to position this so that it matches up. We'll drill some pilots and use some screws to hold this in position, and then this will be the pilot hole for our fly cutter to cut the big hole out. All right, I opened the holes up in my plate just so I could get just a little bit of adjustment to make sure my lines are all lined up. So that should put my pilot right in the center of where I want the opening. It's cutting where I want it to cut, so that's good. If you use a fly cutter to cut this hole, make sure that when you set it up, that the actual pilot part of the fly cutter goes fully down into the hole, so that the straight part of the shaft is riding in the pilot hole and not the fluted drill bit part of the shaft. Because if you don't, then that drill bit part will cut the pilot hole and elongate that hole, and you won't be cutting a nice round circle anymore. All right. Got that deburred. I just want to make sure that this fuel cap or tank support fits good, and it does. So that's good. All right, now I'm going to take the cap flange, which has these same holes in it, centered on the holes. I've got a number 11 drill. I'm going to drill the holes into the tank, Cleco that. That should be our the bolt holes. March holes for the pits. I'm going to do that until we test the tank for leaks. All right, I'll deburr those holes. I need to vacuum all the debris out of the tank. And then I think it's time to put some fittings on. Actually, I think there's one more hole in the aft end of the tank to drill. I got one more hole to drill in the rear of the tank. I think this is for the main fuel outlet. I'm gonna drill a pilot. I got it marked. It's supposed to be 1 inch off the bottom and 3 1/4 inches in. And I've got the spot marked. Got a pilot, and then we're gonna open it up the unit bit up to 3/4. So my unit bit didn't quite penetrate all the way through, but it was so close I just ended up with my little X-Acto, did that, and then took my deburring tool and cleaned it right up. Now we're gonna vacuum out all the shavings and trimmings from inside the tank. Well, I forgot to get the camera running when I put these fittings in, but these are for the sight gauges. There's a piece on the inside that has an O-ring that rests against the tank wall. And then there's a rubber gasket on the inside of that metal washer. And then this nut is a left tightening nut with some Loctite on it that keeps it in place. This is a brass plug that I have for the leak check. This is just temporary. Same thing in this one. And then this fitting here is the same type of fitting, it's just larger. Again, with the O-ring on the inside and the rubber washer on the outside. That's sandwiched and seals this up. So I've got this Schrader valve installed in the threads here. That'll allow me to put some pressure on the tank and leak check it. If you notice when I drilled these holes, I left the vent hole undrilled. And I've made just out of some rubber, I've made a gasket that's going to go on here. And I'm going to temporarily install this ring on the inside and then sandwich the gasket, screw it down. And then I'll put the cap in that, and that should seal the tank off so I can do my leak check. All right, I'll put the cap in there. And then, like I said, that temporary gasket allows me to assemble it outside of the wing and do the leak test. So I'll put the cap in, put it under some pressure. We'll squirt some soapy water around all the different fittings and make sure nothing's leaking. All right, I've successfully completed the leak check. So I went ahead and took the cap and my temporary gasket back off, reclecoed the outer ring of the cap in position, and then drilled out the vent hole. And I've also installed my fittings for the sight gauge. And you want to orient these so that they are in line with each other. So we've got that. The way I did that is you can take an Allen wrench and then reach through the hole in the inside and hold it inside the fitting. It is keyed for an Allen wrench, and that held that in place while I tightened these down, so I didn't twist this and twist on those rubber gaskets and O-rings and damage any kind of seal. So I've got those in place. Got my rear fitting ready for the elbow that goes on that. Next thing, I'm going to put the tank back in the wing. Got the tank back installed in the wing, To show you how I use this string. See, it's gone under each tank support, and then it feeds out the end of this rib, and the same thing in the top. Once I have this rib back in position, I can pull the string out, and that helps me the rib has to go, it has to be sandwiched in between the skin and the support. So that gives me room to get that rib in there as I install it. And you can see here on the top, one of the first things I did before I even put the skin on the wing was to pro seal this rubber scupper gasket here. So it's glued to the aluminum skin, and then that's what I located my holes and stuff from. And you can see there the tank is going right in there, and the holes are lining up good. The tank needs to be up against the forward spar and as far to the root as possible. Now I'm working on the brackets that keep the fuel tank kind of securely lodged in position. So one of them goes, there's an access cover in the bottom of the wing here. It goes up inside there and rests against the rear spar. And then this other piece sits on top of that, so the back of the tank butts up against that. So what I did when the wing was upside down, as I measured out and drilled the 6 holes for the rivets to do that. And now I've put these in position, and I've marked, I don't know if you can see the red dots, where those holes are. I'm going to drill those out to number 40. We'll Cleco those in place once they're drilled out, open the holes up to number 30, get everything deburred, and then we'll put the 1/8 rivets in. I've got my marks. This is my punch. I'm going to try to punch in the center of the marks. Punch just will help the drill to center up on the hole instead of sliding around when it first starts. We're starting with a number 40. In case I didn't transfer these just right, then drilling it out to a number 30, the larger hole for the 1/8 rivet, gives us a little bit of slop room to make that adjustment as I final size the holes and put the rivets in. Time getting that to focus, but brackets are in place. Clecos are in position. It's time to rivet the fuel tank brackets in position. All right, I'm putting the fuel cap together here. Again, this is the scupper ring that's pro sealed to the top skin. We've got a retainer ring inside that it has a split in it so that you can ease it into the hole. And then this long temporary 2-inch screw is grabbing that retainer ring and holding it in position. And I pivot the cap out of the way. This is, I forget what this is called. Maybe the tank support or cap support. From the plans, it looks like the large gaps go forward and aft. We want that down in the hole and straight against the bottom of the tank so it supports the tank. I got the fuel tank support in there. I believe it's nice and flat on the bottom and standing straight. Again, this was just a temporary, this long screw, I don't know if you can see that there's a cone-shaped part on the bottom of that. But that allowed me to grab that retainer ring and then spin this out of the way and slide that support in. So now this will hold the position while I put the normal screws in there. Then we'll replace that one long screw. Right, this large hole gets the vent. It's also threaded and it looks nice and centered up. I'm not going to put that in permanently right now. I don't want to getting banged up. That's in well. What we're going to do now is we're going to take one screw at a time and put thread sealant on it and then put it back in. But we'll leave the other 4 screws in while we do that for each one, to keep it everything in position. I decided to go ahead and put the vent in just to test fit it. I'm going to take it back out again so it doesn't get broken off while it's in storage or getting painted, that sort of thing. So it is grabbing the threads fine. You can just see the hole there. That takes airflow, pressurizes the tank. I got the root rib riveted on the bottom now. Couldn't really video that just for the angle. I got my flaps and ailerons temporarily on right now. Just checking for clearance. The main thing was that they're pretty close together right here. I did just a little tweaking on the hinges to make sure I had separation there. Fuel tank went in well. I got the vents removed just for storage. Got the cover, got that tape covering the hole. Well, that pretty much wraps up the right wing. The next thing I'll do is get the wing out of here and put it on the rack. I think the next thing in the build is probably going to be making wing tips. I'm going to try the stock ones that come in the kit. They're plastic first. One of the builders named Derek has a couple videos on his site on making a jig, kind of a box out of MDF to help mount it. So I'm going to give that a go. If that doesn't work out, I'll probably transition over to the Aerosport products. They have a nice carbon fiber setup. Here, I'll show you the wing tips and my wing rack. Right now, I've got the wingtips just sitting inside the fuselage cage here, but you can see there's an ABS plastic outer shell, and then there's also a rib, and those have to get mated together and everything trimmed and fit and all that. And like I said, Derek's got that box that seemed to help get it to fit well for him. So I'm going to give that a try, and you build that out of MDF. This is the left wing sitting on the rack. This is a rack I've had. A neighbor and I built a couple of them a while back. Just out of some scrap lumber and some scrap carpet. But we'll get the right wing on the rack there, and I believe I can do the wingtips while they're on the rack, and then it'll be onto the fuselage. At least that's the plan for now. Thanks for tuning in to Fly with Brian. I'll get back with you on the RANs when I make some more progress.